Hey, warriors. So, I want to be clear in this video because a lot of us are still confused. I think we've been confused for quite some time, or at least off and on confused. But I think that we're reaching a, peaking point, if you will. You know, I want you to understand this is not collapse. I said it in another video. This is refinement. And refinement, is what happens before one life ends and another begins. Plain and simple. And I don't mean metaphorically, I don't mean someday, I mean now. You know, um, People keep asking, why does nothing, why doesn't, why aren't things fitting anymore? However you want to put it. Um, and the reason is because refinement removes, you know, what you held together by approval, what you built from survival, those things. What only worked when you were disconnected from yourself. And, a lot of us are no longer disconnected from ourselves, you know? And you're not losing your life, you're losing what could only exist, when you weren't fully present. Jobs, relationships, habits, identities, they're not being stripped away, you know? Um, they're they're becoming more impossible to maintain. You understand? And that's an important difference, really. And here's the mistake that I'm seeing everywhere. Well, at least a lot of places. People think this phase means, fix everything, try harder, hold on longer, explain yourself. But no, it's not. We're not needing more effort. We're needing more honesty. Plain and simple. If you force what no longer fits, you are going to exhaust your nervous system. And a lot of you already have. Sorry, but you have. You know? Um, and I don't want you to think that this is weakness. It's not, but your system is saying, I will not carry what is not true anymore. And isn't that what we wanted? You know? Um, I don't know. I just, your old life, isn't going to end in this dramatic explosion, okay? It ends with, small refusals, I guess. You stop pretending that you're okay when you're not. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing people that won't, or that are only willing to meet the old version of you. Or you stop chasing people that aren't willing to meet you at all. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. Stop it. And another thing, too, you guys, we got to stop explaining ourselves constantly. We don't owe anybody any explanation about any goddamn thing if we don't want to. You know? Constantly explaining why we look this way, why we look that way. It's, you know what I'm saying? Fuck those people. They're constantly wanting to know why you don't want to come, why you don't want to do this, what? Because I said so. That's it. you know? Um, and another thing too, stop performing spirituality. Start living it. These are the kinds of things that are going to let that new life land the way that it needs to. And when we stop doing these things, the old life has nowhere to stand. Do you understand? That's when people start saying things like, I don't recognize myself anymore. And I say, sorry, stop. My cat is trying to scratch everything. But I say, good. You know what I'm saying? That means that what we're doing is working. If I could give, one last advice to people before this new life starts beginning, and it's going to be different for each of us, at different times, I would say not to rush. Don't rush to rebuild a new life. Most people, want to rebuild too fast because the silence feels unsafe, I guess, if if you want to call it that. But this pause is not empty. This is the recalibration. And if you fill it with, I don't know, bullshit, you know what I mean? If you fill it with, I don't know, I guess more distractions, old patterns will sneak back up looking different, wearing new clothes, if you will. You know what I mean? Dressed in a new outfit. So let things be quiet. Let them be unclear for a minute. Your nervous system will learn safety without that fucking chaos attached to it. You know what I mean? That's how the new life is going to form cleanly, And I need to be honest too, because I know some of you will turn back. And it's, not because you can't do this, because you can. Okay? But because it's going to require things of you that maybe a lot that all of us are not comfortable with yet, I guess. You're gonna be, your presence can't have that constant validation, anymore. Your truth doesn't need to be explained, like I said. Boundaries. You're gonna need to start feeling those without feeling guilty. That kind of thing. I don't know. And that's going to scare, the versions of us that, had to survive by adapting. You know what I mean? So if you feel that fear, and I don't blame you if you do, you know what I mean? But if you do feel that fear, don't shame it. You know what I mean? Just don't let it take the wheel. You know what I mean? Don't let it drive. The new life, also isn't going to feel exciting at first. It's going to feel steady, quieter, less dramatic, more self-contained. And I don't want people to get bored either. You know what I mean? Just let things chill for a minute. Peace doesn't land like adrenaline. Like we've had the past, I don't know how long, few years anyways, all that adrenaline. Peace is going to settle in you like a breath. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just don't want anybody to, I don't know. Anyways, if you feel like your life is ending, in a way it is. You know what I mean? But the only part, but only the part that, required you to abandon yourself. You know what I mean? So fuck it, let it end. We're not abandoning ourselves anymore. Just don't grip what's dissolving, I guess. Don't rush, don't rush what's forming, and don't grip what's dissolving, I guess is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Just let it do its thing. Just stay honest during this process, stay present, and let that crossing, over from one life to the next complete itself. And it will, you know? I love you guys.